Scary telling.
I had always wanted a pet, someone to keep me company during the long days at home while my husband was at work. So when I saw the black cat on the street, shivering and hungry, I knew that I had to take him in. "Please, let's take him," I told Noah, my husband. "No, we don't have space, plus, it will be another expense we can't handle now." But I couldn't resist the little furball. "Pretty please?" I asked him, almost as googly-eyed as my new feline friend. "Okay, but you clean his shit and you feed it," he told me, getting the cat in his arms and playing with him. It was a-okay with me. I stayed home most of the time and needed a companion. "Come home, Jeremy," I said to the cat, and he meowed in return, following us into the house. The first few days with Jeremy were enjoyable. He would curl up in my lap while I read, or follow me around the house while I did chores. But then the gifts started appearing. At first, it was just small animals, like butterflies and lizards, that Jeremy would leave on the doorstep. I assumed it was normal cat behavior, and so did Noah. But as the days went on, the gifts became more disturbing. One day, I found a dead bird on the doorstep, completely maimed. The next day, it was a squirrel. The day after that, a rabbit. And each time, Jeremy would be waiting for me, his eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. I tried to ignore it, but the nightmares started soon after. I dreamt that Jeremy was growing larger and more sinister with each passing day, his eyes glowing red as he whispered dark secrets into my ear. I woke up each time covered in sweat, but I told myself that it was just my imagination. Jeremy was just a cat, after all. But the nightmares kept coming, and so did the gifts. Noah started to get distressed by it, not used to having cat gifts, but I knew better. The gifts got even more intense, to the point that we were having dead birds, squirrels, and other animals too big for Jeremy to normally hunt, completely maimed. But despite everything, I couldn't bring myself to get rid of Jeremy. He was my companion, my friend, and I couldn't imagine my life without him. So I pushed my fears aside and convinced myself that everything was fine. Little did I know that the worst was yet to come. As time went on, the gifts that Jeremy brought home became more and more disturbing. The animals he brought back were no longer just small creatures, but larger ones, like rabbits and even small dogs, with their bodies maimed beyond recognition. The sight of them made my stomach churn, but I couldn't bring myself to get rid of Jeremy. Noah, on the other hand, became increasingly worried about the cat's behavior. He pleaded with me to get rid of Jeremy, but I refused. I told him that Jeremy was just a cat, and that he was protecting us from something far worse. Despite my reassurances, Noah was becoming increasingly scared of the cat. He didn't like the way Jeremy would watch him with his glowing eyes, or the way he seemed to be constantly sizing him up. But I still refused to listen to him. One night, I had another nightmare about Jeremy. He was perched on my chest, his eyes glowing red as he whispered dark secrets into my ear. When I woke up, I found Noah screaming in agony, his fingers severed, and the black cat watching from the shadows. Noah was certain that Jeremy had something to do with it, but I just chalked it off. Regardless, he wanted me to get rid of Jeremy because he was getting frightened by the gifts. But I refused to let go of my companion, even when the gifts became more gruesome. Jeremy would bring home larger animals, like deer and even bears, their bodies mangled beyond recognition. It was getting harder and harder to explain away his behavior, but I couldn't bear to part with him. The nightmares kept coming too, each one more vivid and terrifying than the last. I dreamt of Jeremy growing larger and more malevolent with each passing day, his eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. In my dreams, he would whisper dark secrets to me, urging me to do things I would never normally do. But despite everything, I couldn't bring myself to get rid of him. Jeremy was my friend, my constant companion, and I couldn't imagine my life without him. I told myself that everything was fine, that I was just overreacting. But the fear was starting to take its toll on me, and I could feel myself slipping away. I was becoming more isolated, spending all my time at home with Jeremy. Noah was growing increasingly worried about my mental state, but I refused to listen to him. I was convinced that Jeremy was protecting me from something far worse, something that I couldn't even imagine. And I was willing to do anything to keep him by my side. As the days went on, I found myself growing more and more isolated, spending all my time at home with Jeremy. I couldn't explain it, but I felt like he was the only one who truly understood me. The nightmares continued, and with each passing night, they grew more vivid and terrifying. I dreamt of Jeremy growing larger and more malevolent, his eyes glowing with an otherworldly light as he whispered dark secrets into my ear. But it wasn't just in my dreams that I felt his presence. During the day, I could feel his eyes watching me, his gaze following me around the house. I tried to convince myself that it was just my imagination, but the feeling never went away. Noah was becoming increasingly worried about my mental state, but I refused to listen to him. I was convinced that Jeremy was protecting me from something far worse, and I was willing to do anything to keep him by my side. But the gifts that Jeremy brought home were becoming more and more disturbing. He would bring back animals that were too large for him to hunt on his own, their bodies mangled beyond recognition. And each time he brought them back, I could feel his presence growing stronger, his eyes glowing brighter. Noah was becoming increasingly distressed by it all, not used to having cat gifts, but I knew better. I knew that Jeremy was protecting me, and I refused to let go of him. But then something happened that made me start to doubt myself. One day, I woke up to find a dead dog on our doorstep, its body mangled beyond recognition. I tried to tell myself that it was just Jeremy being protective, but deep down, I knew that something was off. Noah was becoming more and more scared of the cat, and I could see why. Jeremy's behavior was becoming more and more unpredictable, and I could feel his malevolence growing stronger with each passing day. And then one night, I had another nightmare. Jeremy was perched on my chest, his eyes glowing red as he whispered dark secrets into my ear. He asked me if he should rid me of my problems, and I screamed no before waking up. The next day, I found out that our neighbor's dog had been killed. Its body was mangled beyond recognition, just like the other animals that Jeremy had brought home. Noah was certain that Jeremy had something to do with it, but I just couldn't bring myself to believe it. I was becoming more and more isolated, spending all my time at home with Jeremy. I was convinced that he was protecting me, but deep down, I knew that something was off. His behavior was becoming more and more unpredictable, and I could feel his malevolence growing stronger with each passing day. I should have listened to Noah. I should have seen the signs. But I was too blinded by my love for Jeremy, too convinced that he was my protector. But then one day, everything changed. I came home to find Jeremy waiting for me, his eyes glowing with a malevolent light. As I tried to back away, I felt something grab my ankle and drag me to the ground. The black cat loomed over me, his claws poised to strike. And then I understood. Jeremy wasn't just a cat. He was possessed by a malevolent spirit, one that had been using me as a conduit for its evil deeds. As I screamed for help, the black cat sank its teeth into my throat, ending my life in a bloody mess. I should have listened to Noah. I should have seen the signs. But now it was too late. Noah came home to find my lifeless body lying on the ground, surrounded by Jeremy's gruesome gifts. In a fit of rage and despair, he grabbed the black cat and threw it against the wall, shattering its skull. But the evil spirit that possessed Jeremy was not so easily defeated. As Noah mourned my death, he realized that the malevolent force was now inside of him, using him as its new conduit for destruction. He became a shell of his former self, haunted by the memory of the black cat and the evil that it brought into our lives. He could feel the malevolent force growing stronger with each passing day, and he knew that it was only a matter of time before it consumed him completely. Noah tried to fight it, but the possession was too strong. He found himself doing things he would never normally do, things that made his skin crawl. He could feel the evil taking hold of him, and he knew that he was running out of time. In the end, Noah couldn't take it anymore. He couldn't bear the thought of living with the evil spirit inside of him any longer. So he did the only thing he could do. He ended his own life, hoping that it would finally break the cycle of possession and destruction. But I knew better. I knew that the evil would never truly be defeated. It would always be there, lurking in the shadows, waiting for its next victim. And I knew that I could never let my guard down again. The black cat had taught me a valuable lesson, one that I would never forget. Evil could take on many forms, and sometimes it was hiding in plain sight. After the tragic events that transpired in my home, I knew that I needed to warn others about the malevolent spirit that had possessed the black cat. I didn't want anyone else to suffer the same fate that Noah and I had. So I began to research the history of the black cat, trying to understand where it came from and how it had become possessed. I learned that black cats had been associated with dark magic and witchcraft for centuries, and that they were often seen as omens of bad luck. But what I discovered was even more disturbing. The black cat that had entered our lives had been possessed by the spirit of a witch who had been executed for practicing dark magic. It seemed that the spirit had been searching for a new vessel and had found it in the innocent form of a black cat. And once it had possessed the cat, it had used it to carry out its evil deeds. As I delved deeper into the history of the black cat, I discovered that it had left a trail of destruction in its wake. Other families had reported similar experiences, with the black cat bringing home gruesome gifts and causing nightmares and fear. But none of them had suspected the true nature of the cat. They had all assumed that it was just a feral or wild animal, not realizing that it was possessed by an evil spirit. I knew that I needed to share my story with others, to warn them about the dangers of the black cat and its malevolent spirit. And so, I wrote a book detailing my experiences, hoping to educate others and prevent them from falling victim to the same fate. The book was a success, and many people were grateful for the warning. But there were also those who scoffed at my story, dismissing it as just another piece of horror fiction. But I knew the truth. The black cat was real, and its legacy would live on, haunting those who dared to cross its path. And I could only hope that my warning would be enough to save others from the same fate that had befallen Noah and me. In the end, the black cat had taught me a valuable lesson about the dangers of the supernatural. I knew that I could never let my guard down again, that I had to be vigilant against the forces of darkness that lurked in the shadows. And as I closed the final pages of my book, I felt a sense of closure. The legacy of the black cat had been exposed, and I could finally move on from the nightmare that had haunted me for so long.